Fellas, it seems to be quite a trend nowadays that the second a UFC champion wins their belt, they immediately start calling for the champion above them, trying to get that double champ status, rather than defending against the division ahead of them. So you know what? I've gone theoretical mode, and I've done a theoretical matchup of every single UFC champion in the UFC right now in a matchup with the champion above them. Obviously, I can't do it with John Jones because he's the the heaviest division, but all the UFC champions matched up against the champion above them to see how well these champions were doing these theoretical matchups. Some of them are complete blowouts and should never happen, and some of them are actually quite competitive fights that, you know what, if they keep winning, I wouldn't even mind seeing this fight in the future. So let me know your thoughts on these matchups. Starting off with the first one, Alejandro Pantoja versus Sean O'Malley. Pantoja obviously just fought this weekend. These guys, I don't think this is a realistic fight, but they've been going at it on Twitter. I don't know why they've been going at it on Twitter. Apparently, Sean O'Malley has actually dropped Pantoja as well. My prediction for this fight, Sean O'Malley by KO. Yeah, Sean O'Malley would KO Pantoja. Pantoja gets caught a lot in every single one of his fights. I mean, just look at his last three. The fight with Moreno was an absolute war where he got caught so much to the point where it was such a close decision. The fight with Royval, he was getting tagged in and out. The fight with Urseg, he got caught a lot in that fight with Urseg. Again, a controversial fight. And you can't afford to get caught by Sean O'Malley. He's a sniper, and he's much bigger than you as well. He's a knockout artist. Another thing I've noticed about Pantoja is you see him in all of his fights. He tends to do these things where he runs in, swings for the fences, and then he kind of, gets his stamina back, goes back, runs in, swings for the fences, tries landing a big shot, maybe setting up a takedown. You can't do that against Sean O'Malley. We saw it with Aljamain Sterling. You run in against Sean O'Malley, he's going to tag you with the right hand and put you to sleep. So I'm going Sean O'Malley to knock out Pantoja. He's too good of a striker. He's too big for Pantoja, and I just don't think Pantoja can afford to run in and get caught against a guy like Sean O'Malley, being how dangerous he is. Sean O'Malley was able to catch Yan a few times. He was able to knock out Aljamain Sterling, and he absolutely just beat the fuck out of Marlon Vera in one of the best title performances of the year, even though we've only had a few. Best title performances in bantamweight. So, yeah, Sean O'Malley versus Pantoja shouldn't be a competitive fight because Sean O'Malley would knock Pantoja out. Talking of Sean O'Malley, it's all good picking on the little guys in Pantoja, but how would he do against Ilia Topuria? Another fight that has been talked about a lot. Arguably one of the biggest fights in the UFC, but obviously I want to see them both defend against the contenders in their division. We'll talk about Topuria defending in a second, but Sean O'Malley versus Ilia Topuria. I'd pick Ilia Topuria to win this fight by decision, but I think it'd be closer than people are. I don't think it'd be a close fight. I think it would be a clear decision win to Ilia Topuria. But I think because of O'Malley's striking and the fact that he's such a good striker, I think he'll be able to hang in there with 5 rounds. Topuria would be beating up on Sean O'Malley with the fact that he's got good wrestling, he's well-rounded, and he's also got sharp boxing as well. It would be a close boxing match on the feet, but because Topuria's a bigger guy, because he's got the grappling, and because he's got, a few other advantages being at featherweight, I'd pick Topuria to win this fight. I think he'd rough up O'Malley, get him a bit bloody, give him the toughest fight he's had in the UFC. Quite similar to the Peter Yan fight, but I'd definitely favour it more to Ilia Topuria, so I'm picking Topuria to win that fight. But I do think Topuria would get caught at some point in the fight, not necessarily rocked or KO'd or anything like that, but I think it would be very similar to the Jai Herbert fight, where at some point in the fight Sean O'Malley lands a big shot and wobbles, or maybe not wobble, but just lands a big shot on Ilia Topuria that gets the crowd cheering. But yeah, Sean O'Malley versus Topuria. I have Topuria winning that fight. And then Topuria versus Makhachev. Topuria, no surprise, called out Makhachev when he's got a whole division to defend against. The guy hasn't even got one defense yet. Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. I think Makhachev would squash Ilia Topuria in the later rounds. I think on the feet, Ilia Topuria obviously the better striker than Makhachev, but because Makhachev's going to be mixing it up with his grappling, I've got to pick Makhachev to win this fight. He's the best fighter in the UFC, and Ilia Topuria's best wins are Josh Emmett and Volkanovski. He knocked out Volkanovski, so was Makhachev. He's also beaten Volkanovski by decision. He's also submitted Charles Oliveira. Even though Makhachev doesn't have a crazy resume, his wins as of right now are more impressive than Ilia Topuria's wins, and I think the grappling of Islam Makhachev, he'd go out there against the smaller guy in Ilia Topuria, he does well against 145 as he'd take him down, and he'd submit him, I'd say, in the later rounds. I think maybe Kimura lock, maybe armbar, maybe, no, it won't be an armbar, maybe a straight arm lock, but yeah, Makhachev, I think he'd submit Ilia Topuria in around round 4. Topuria's good, I think he'd put up a fight, but I think Makhachev's just too much, man. Makhachev beats everyone at 155, so Makhachev, but Makhachev being unbeatable. Now we're putting him against a guy at 170 in Leon Edwards, a much less favourable matchup than Ilia Topuria. I've got Leon Edwards winning this fight, but I think this is probably, I'd say this is the closest fight on this entire list. Leon Edwards versus Islam Makhachev at 170. Now, this is a fight that actually nearly happened. It was, well, it weren't scheduled, but it was supposed to fight at, they were supposed to fight at the main event at UFC 300, but because of Ramadan, Islam Makhachev couldn't fight. I'd pick Edwards to win this fight. First reason being, Makhachev used to fighting smaller guys. His last two fights have both been against Alexander Volkanovski, a 145er, and in that first fight, it was a very, very close and arguable decision win to Makhachev, and now he's fighting not just a 155 guy, but a 170-pounder in Leon Edwards, and Leon Edwards is a big welterweight as well. He's not just one of these smaller 170-pounders in like a Colby Covington. He's a big 170 guy. On top of that as well, Leon Edwards has the grappling. He's faced grappler after grappler. He's just faced Kamaru Usman twice and Colby Covington, so it's not like it's a completely new style to Leon Edwards. And then on the feet, Makhachev has shown that his striking has become increasingly dangerous, but there's no way that he's outstriking Leon Edwards. I think both of them are well-rounded, but the fact that Leon's been facing grapplers and he's a much bigger guy than Makhachev, I'm going Leon Edwards to win this one by decision. It would be a fairly close fight. I think Makhachev would win a few rounds and Edwards would win the majority of the rounds, but yeah, I'd take in a 5-round fight, Leon Edwards to beat Islam Makhachev. And then finally, well, not finally, I don't know why I'm saying that, Leon Edwards versus Dricus du Plessis. I don't think this fight has really been talked about. I've got Dricus winning this one by decision, but I think it'd still be a close fight. Same with how Makhachev is big, same with how Edwards is big for Islam Makhachev. I think Dricus would be too big for Leon Edwards. Dricus is a thick middleweight. He's a big middleweight out there. And I think the fact that he's, even though Leon Edwards, you know, is a very technical guy, and if Dricus was to stand and strike with him, I think Leon Edwards would pick him apart. I think Dricus is just too much. He's a very overwhelming guy. The fact that he'd be mixing up with his wrestling as well. He hits hard. He's a dangerous guy in the middleweight division. He's finished a lot of guys. He finished Whittaker as well. I think even though Leon Edwards would be able to put up a fight in the middleweight division, I've got Dricus taking this one by decision. A fairly close fight, similar to the Sean Strickland fight, but I just think Dricus du Plessis would be too much for Leon Edwards at 185. So I'm picking Dricus du Plessis to beat Leon Edwards. I think his size would be too much for Leon Edwards, and even though Leon Edwards is a very technical guy, a guy who's so unorthodox and explosive and just all guns blazing in Dricus du Plessis, I think that's not a very favourable style for Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards would prefer a more technical style that he can pick apart rather than a guy like Dricus. So I'm picking Dricus by decision. Then we've got Dricus du Plessis versus Alex Pereira. Yeah, Pereira would sleep Dricus in the first round. Like I said, Dricus has this really unorthodox style where he runs in and he's really unorthodox. And it would work against a guy like Leon Edwards who likes to pick his opponents apart. But a guy as dangerous as Alex Pereira, where it only takes one. He's knocked out Sean Strickland, a much more technical guy than Dricus. He's knocked out Jamal Hill. He's knocked out Yuri Prochazka. He's already faced an unorthodox fighter in Yuri Prochazka. I just don't think there's a route to victory for Dricus du Plessis. Obviously, you can say the grappling, but I don't think Dricus du Plessis is going to be able to keep a grappling pace on Alex Pereira for 5 rounds in the light heavyweight division. First of all, Pereira is absolutely huge. He would be way too big for Dricus du Plessis. Pereira's improved his grappling, especially since the Jan Blachowicz fight as well. And even if Dricus was to take him down in round 1 or round 2, Dricus' stamina has a lot of questions, and I feel like the more vulnerable that Dricus becomes later on in the fight, it just opens closes the gap more for Pereira to land that big shot. But I think he'd finish him in the first. I think first round, Dricus would go in and Pereira would land that left hook and knock him out. I just don't think there's a chance of Dricus du Plessis ever beating Alex Pereira, especially not in the light heavyweight division. And then finally, Alex Pereira versus John Jones. John Jones has recently been calling for this matchup. I've addressed it in a video of my own. A fight that hopefully shouldn't happen if it's for the undisputed heavyweight belt, but I wouldn't mind seeing this fight, I guess, if it's not for a belt. But John Jones versus Alex Pereira, it'd basically be rewatching John Jones versus Cyril Gane. John Jones would take Alex Pereira down in the first round and submit him. I understand Alex Pereira's improved his grappling, he's working with Glover Teixeira, but he's facing a huge heavyweight in John Jones who can grapple, who's faced every style you can think of. He's coming off a submission win to Cyril Gane, who's a much bigger guy than Alex Pereira. Even though Pereira's dangerous on the feet, and he could definitely beat Jones on the feet, Jones at heavyweight, he'd just take him down and submit him in the first round. He just would. As good as Alex Pereira is, and as much as I'd want him to win this fight, I just don't think there's a route for victory. Well, there is a route to victory. It's keeping it on the feet, but the second Jones gets that double leg, it's a wrap for Alex Pereira. And yeah, that is me matchmaking every single UFC champion with the champion above them. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with these predictions? What are your thoughts on them? Thank you for watching.